gentlemen, this is version 2. And if you've been wondering why I've been gone so long, it's because I have severe ADD and I've been making ridiculous videos like the one you just saw. But I'm back, we're all here. I'm going to get some preliminary stuff out of the way and then we're going to get into the draft. First of all, there's going to be some changes to the layout. Unfortunately, one of the biggest assets to my last video was the little videos playing in the bottom right or wherever it was. Can't do that anymore. I got hit with about 40 different copyright claims. It was kind of ridiculous. Apparently, I'm not in trouble. They just wanted to take all the revenue earned from that video. So I did. Is it just me, or is it a little funny that people who basically just rip off videos and chop them up and put music to them are upset with me and saying, "Hey, that's my video," when I use their video? Is that a little weird? How is it your video? You just stole somebody else's video and called it your own, which is what I did. But if you're going to do it, I can do it. Stop saying you own it. But whatever. I'm not letting them take money from me. That's nonsense. And I'm not even making money. It's just a principle thing. You're not going to make money off of my work. So there is a new layout, platform, etc. Something else I've been working on is the thing that you are looking at right now. You know, as I was thinking about it, I got a lot of comments on my last video, and I actually really liked getting them, and it got me to thinking, you know, I know the normal way that we do this whole thing is I make a video, I call myself the ultimate supreme expert in all things, and then you jump on here and you say you're an idiot, I hate you, I hope your whole family dies, by the way, here's why you're wrong. And that's fine, but just so you know, I do want this to be sort of interactive. These are you know, I use different draft boards and all these different things because I want to have different teams taking different players. I'm going to be doing a lot of these things. So if you don't like my pick, fine. You can hate my next pick and the one after, and eventually on week 9 or whatever it is, you're gonna like one of these picks. But more than that, I want this to genuinely be sort of a community type deal. So as you can see, I put my email, I've got my Twitter, and I also created a Facebook group. I would have put the name of the Facebook group there, but it's basically just mock draft with 75 numbers, so I'll just put the link in the description for you. But ultimately what I want is I want this to be sort of a community type thing. I don't know your team as well as you know your team. So if you have some insights, I want to know what that is. I want to learn from you. So if you're a 49ers fan, I want to know all about the 49ers. I want to know everything about the 49ers. Furthermore, if you're a big college football guy, a big draft guy, you got an opinion on, well, this guy's definitely not a first round draft pick because of this, that, or the other, fine, I want to hear from you too. And as we progress into this thing, you know, I was thinking, again, this is up to you. If you just want to sit here and watch me do videos, that's fine, but I was even thinking we do like interactive mock drafts. So you take your team, we get 32 guys together, and we do a draft. We can do trades and the whole shebang, whatever. So that's kind of what I want to build. This is just getting warmed up. This is getting all of us warmed up. You never heard of that guy? You can jump in the comments section and scream, "I hate you and I hope you die." I'm fine with that. But why don't you go watch some film on him? Go check him out, which, by the way, Draft Breakdown just started charging. It's only $2 a month, but now I have to explain to my wife why I'm spending more money on football stuff when every time I tell her I'm not going to spend any more money, and then I lie because I keep spending more money. Which brings me to our final square at the bottom right. I'll put a link there as well, but it's a shortened link. It's not that hard to type in if you so chose. This is how I'm going to plan on getting funding for the thing. PayPal is not, or excuse me, YouTube is not paying me anything. And, you know, I thought about Patreon. That's what all the cool kids are doing. But I don't want to do pay for play. I don't like that model. Like I said, I legitimately want this to be interactive. I want to be accessible. You got a comment, you got a question, you want to be involved in some way, just reach out. Twitter, email, Facebook group, whatever, comment section if you want. Just do what you want to do. I'm not going to give you my phone number or my address. That's where I'm going to draw the line. But I just didn't like the pay for play stuff where, hey, if you give me $5 a month, then you can talk to me and listen to my expert wisdom. That's not how I want to do stuff. So I know it's a little early, you haven't seen anything, but as we get going, if you appreciate this, if you enjoy this, it would help my marriage a little bit if I could just cover that, $2 a month from Draft Breakdown, cover this YouTube editor software, cover all the, I don't know, spending quite a bit a month on football related stuff. So if I could just cover the expenses, that'd be awesome. Again, I know I just started off, but something to think of down the road. So that is the biggest takeaway. I want you guys to really consider kind of just joining in and having fun, because I just want to have fun, especially when the football season's done. We got nothing else. We got nothing but each other to sit around and talk football when there's no football to talk about. But with that, let's jump in. So one other thing, I'm several weeks behind, and one of the reasons I missed an entire week is because the week ran out, and I was like, crap, there's a new draft order, I have to start all over. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to try to get these things all done in a week, but we're sticking with this draft board. So this is from like 2 weeks ago. Starting off, though, we do have the 49ers picking first overall, and I got them taking Saquon Barkley, running back out of Penn State. You know, they went out and got Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know exactly how good he's going to be, but as a GM, if you go out and spend that much draft capital on a quarterback, and then you take your first overall draft pick and you draft a quarterback, that's you're asking to be fired, in my opinion. So at that point, you just take the best guy available. They absolutely could use a running back, but you got Garoppolo. Now you add a dynamic running back. We're starting to build a pretty scary offense, and we've in just 2 moves. Are we a good football team at this point? No, we still suck a little bit, but we're going to start winning some football games. Next up, we have the Cleveland Browns. Quarterback kind of makes sense, but if you look at the fact that they're looking, they tried to get Garoppolo, they've been trying to get quarterbacks now, you have to wonder, maybe it's just due diligence, but if you're planning on grabbing a quarterback, as you know you're drafting probably number 1 overall, at worst number 2, so you know you can get a quarterback. If you have that already planned out, why are you looking to spend so much on a guy like Garoppolo? So it kind of makes you wonder. Plus, you have 2 picks in the first round relatively early on, so you can afford to kind of wait a little bit. So in this case, I got him taking Minkah Fitzpatrick out of Alabama, defensive back. He's a corner safety hybrid kind of guy. The reason I went with Minkah as opposed to Derwin James, I do see a lot of places saying that the Browns need corners. I don't know that I necessarily see it as a dire need, but certainly their passing defense is just a disaster. So you grab a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick, you put him wherever you want. If you want to put him at safety, put him at safety. You want to put him at corner, at slot, boundary, whatever. He can play anywhere. So you take him and you start building around him. Next up, New York Giants. Now this is kind of like my big test every week, is where does Lamar Jackson go, which is who they're taking. Lamar Jackson, quarterback out of Louisville. To be completely honest, if I'm a GM, I'm not touching him. I know how dynamic he is. I mean, the guy he's as fast as Michael Vick. It's unbelievable how fast he is. Incredible arm strength, the whole 9 yards. But he's way too reckless running the ball. I mean, he's got like a 3-year shelf life before he just is completely broken. With that said, though, with a guy like this, you have to be able to build an offense around him. And I don't think there's an offense in the NFL right now that can just plug him in and be ready to go. With that, it kind of made sense to me for the Giants, because you assume they're firing everybody. So we fire everybody, we bring in a whole new coaching staff, then we bring in this dynamic quarterback, and we just rebuild this whole thing around Lamar Jackson. So we got weapons everywhere. We have a defense that's underperforming, but we know they're good. We got elite weapons at wide receiver. Now we got a guy that can throw the ball, but he could also take off running. He's one of the fastest guys in the NFL instantly, and he happens to be our quarterback. The things that the defenses have to prepare for when you're going up against Lamar Jackson is incredible. So anyways, a rebuild team makes sense for Lamar Jackson. You just got to make sure that the coach that you're getting is able to build something around him. We'll assume the Giants go ahead and do that. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to take Bradley Chubb, edge rusher out of NC State. I really like Derwin James to the Buccaneers. It just, for a lot of reasons, it makes sense, but I can't do that every week. The Buccaneers are having a lot of trouble this year. Assuming Jameis Winston can learn to keep his hands off of things that don't belong to him, whether it be crab legs or Uber drivers, the offense has a lot of potential. The defense also has some pieces, but you got to go out and get those primary kind of premium positions, right? You got your quarterback, you got some wide receivers. Absolutely could use some offensive line help, but you need an edge rusher. You don't really have one. And Bradley Chubb is just a big, bad, scary dude who's going to instantly upgrade your defense. Next up, we got the Indianapolis Colts, considered taking some trade offers here. There's a lot of teams that would like to move up at this point because there's a lot of talent falling down, which, by the way, I didn't mention this, but kind of going a little more need than board this year, good lord, this time around. But I got the Colts taking quarterback Josh Rosen out of UCLA. It's a painful pick because the Colts need so many things, and quarterback is the one thing we should be able to say they don't need with Andrew Luck, but I just don't know at this point. If the Colts feel like the career of Andrew Luck is in danger, you need to draft a quarterback. And that kind of sucks because you're officially in rebuild mode at that point. You're kind of just throwing in the towel and saying we need to start from scratch. So I don't know if that's the best option, but in this case, that's what we're doing. Next up, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. With the Browns coming up, they're receiving a ton of trade offers, and one of these trade offers they're going to accept. As the Broncos move up to 6, they're going to give up a 3rd and a 4th round. Broncos, of course, are in dire need of a quarterback. Again, there are rumors that Elway is he's hitting the pavement real hard looking at quarterbacks in this draft class. He's going to trade up and he's going to get quarterback Sam Darnold out of USC. This is actually another painful pick because they've invested a lot in quarterback. You look at, the average age of their quarterback has got to be what? Like 24? And they've got like 5 of them? But they really need one, they really want one, and with the Browns coming up, you know you got to take one. So they pull the trigger, give up a 3rd and a 4th to the Bengals, and they grab Sam Darnold. With that, the Browns. The Browns are extremely upset because they knew they probably should have taken a quarterback early on, but they wanted to go with value. They got Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now the quarterbacks are pretty much off the board and they don't want to reach. So I'm assuming the Browns here are going to do something smart, which is probably stupid. I should have them reaching for a quarterback, but I'm not going to do that. The Browns select safety Derwin James out of Florida State. Last year I did a full 7-round mock draft for all 32 teams, and I loved my Browns picks. This draft right here, I really like these Brown picks. Minkah Fitzpatrick, and then coming back and getting Derwin James. They got a safety, they've got a corner, potentially another second safety. But this is a team with the #1 ranked run defense who just got the 2 best defensive backs in the entire draft to shore up their pass defense. They've got a ton of picks coming up. If they can get a few more weapons and potentially a quarterback in the 2nd round and beyond, which is not impossible, this is legit. This is, you've got your primo edge rusher from last year, Myles Garrett. Now you've got your pass defense, you got your run defense. It's not impossible. It seems stupid to say this because it's the Browns and they should always be horrible, but they could be a decent team next year if they could just hit on a couple of these picks. So with all the craziness going on with quarterbacks and everything else and kind of drafting for need, there's a lot of talent that seems to be falling, and with that, the Chargers are going to pick up the phone and trade with the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are going to give up a 3rd round pick, and they are going to draft Arden Key, edge rusher out of LSU. The Ravens don't have a whole lot going for them. I shouldn't even say that. They're extremely inconsistent. They've completely shut out 2 teams already this year. So they have some talent. They just got to be able to put it together. What they don't really have is a pass rusher. Unless, of course, you want to count Suggs. I don't want to count him because that man is going to die of old age in about 4 hours. You got to get some youth, and you got to stay angry. This is a team that has a reputation for being a big, bad, scary team. Let's keep building on that. Let's go get a big, long, mean, a guy that can jump into a 3-4 kind of defense and just tear up quarterbacks. I'm talking lethal, this guy is. Is he going to turn you into, #1 in your division? Absolutely not. But he's a key piece for any team to at least take that step. A quarterback would be nice, but this is the best available value. He fell way too far. Ravens are going to jump up and grab him. Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, who fell back to 9. They are going to draft, and this is a bit of a reach according to the board I'm using, but they're going to draft guard Quentin Nelson out of Notre Dame. One of these days I'm going to have the Bengals drafting something other than an offensive lineman, but at this point it's just so horrible. I don't know how you do anything but offensive line. Whether it's a guard, a tackle, a center, who cares? Just draft a lineman and draft a lot of them. Again, this is a little bit of a reach, but Nelson is considered maybe the best offensive lineman in this draft, along with guys like McGlinchey, who is on his team. But, you've got the offensive weapons. You've got a brand new, shiny, flashy running back who was considered maybe the best running back in the draft last year. who fell to them in the second round because he is just a violent scumbag. But like everybody else, this is a step in the right direction. Next up, Chicago Bears. I think this is another one where I'm going to have to pick somebody else eventually, but what makes the most sense for this team is a wide receiver. I know your quarterback isn't great, but they're kind of babying him along a little bit. You got to get this guy some weapons, right? The Bears have invested way too much in quarterback. They overpaid for their backup. They went out and got another journeyman backup, and then they traded up and drafted Mitch Trubisky. As much as you've invested in quarterback, you got to start getting some production out of him, and you're not going to do that with the garbage wide receivers that you have, right? Inman cannot be your best wide receiver on your team, which is pretty much what he was last week against the Packers. With that, the Bears are going to take Calvin Ridley, wide receiver out of Alabama. You could try to look at what kind of receiver fits, blah, 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 blah. They don't have a wide receiver, so any style, any kind of play, whether he's a big guy, whether he's a fast guy, he's a slot guy, who cares? Draft a good wide receiver, take the best one available, plug him in where he makes sense, and go make some plays with your new quarterback. Next up, we have the LA Chargers, and I got the Chargers taking Daron Payne, defensive tackle out of Alabama. I actually hate that I keep giving Chargers defensive tackles. It's just the way the board goes. So if you're a Chargers fan, you're sick of it, I apologize. It's just the way the board is, he's fallen way too far. With that said, however, the Chargers could use a little bit more depth. This isn't a depth pick. He's an instant starter. It's not like he's going to be a backup. You never would draft a backup this early on in the draft. But just think with me for a second how scary this defense is going to be with Daron Payne. You've already got Ingram and Bosa, which is maybe the best edge rushing duo in the NFL. I mean, it's hard to argue against that. Nobody talks about it. Extremely underrated, extremely talented, freakish, right? You've got two safeties in Boston and Adai. Again, potentially the best in the NFL. It's unbelievable how good they are. Nobody talks about it. Hayward, Williams, and King. Maybe the best trio of corners in the NFL. I mean, this isn't just hyperbole. It's crazy how good all these guys are. Then you got Corey Liuget, who's a pretty good interior guy. I think that's how you say his name. What you need now as far as defense, and I know offense would probably make more sense, but just bear with me. If you can get some linebackers and another defensive lineman, I mean, this already should be the best defense in the NFL, but we're talking about one of the greatest of all times. If you can get the full potential out of them, which could mean different coaches or whatever it is. I mean, they're not performing as well as they should. But the Jaguars spent a lot of money to get a defense that looks this good. This is something that's being built relatively naturally. I know you went out and paid for guys like Hayward and whatnot, but I mean, this is an incredible football team, an incredible defense. I know, again, you need weapons on offense, but there's more than one round. Take this guy. He's fallen way too far. He's going to be one of the best defensive tackles in this draft, if not the best. This defense is going to be just completely unstoppable. Unstoppable with a guy like Daron Payne. So don't be mad at me. Just take it straight to the bank, will you? It's defense that wins championships, supposedly. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But we got the Chargers taking Daron Payne. Next up, the New York Jets. Now understand, this is strictly a pick from my board as well as a little bit of need, but I have them taking Dorance Armstrong Jr., edge rusher out of Kansas. If we assume the board is right and Dorance Armstrong is worthy of a pick here, I don't hate it. The Jets certainly could use some better outside linebackers. Dorance Armstrong, I think, would fit that 3-4 outside linebacker kind of system. He's currently rated as... he weighs about 240, like 250. So he's not going to be a very good defensive end at that weight. Now, my personal opinion of Dorance Armstrong is that he's kind of your typical end of the first, early second type guy, right? Where TJ Watt kind of fell. But different board, different draft, different week. We got Dorance Armstrong going to the Jets. We're going to assume our board is correct and this guy's a freak and the Jets have got themselves a great edge rusher. Next up, we have the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders have a few picks that they can go with, but they've got a lot of different options. The board is kind of in their favor a little bit, so they can wait a little bit. For that reason, they are going to pick up the phone and they are going to trade with my Green Bay Packers. And the Packers are going to take a guy that I'm honestly not all that familiar with, or at least I wasn't until I did this. But the Packers are going to give up a 3rd round and a 6th round for outside linebacker Clelin Ferrell out of Clemson. The Packers could use quite a bit of help in a lot of different areas. With Devontae's huge contract coming up, with Jordy's contract coming to an end, and him talking already about retirement potentially, wide receiver would make some sense. Despite drafting 400 running backs, a running back wouldn't be the worst option. They need a ton of offensive line. They need a lot of help everywhere. But the fact of the matter is, despite the fact that Clay and Perry are staying healthy for the first time ever, they don't have any depth at the position of pass rush. These guys are constantly hurt. Clay is getting toward the end of his contract. You got to fortify that position. And despite them being healthy, they're still not getting any pass rush, which is really hurting our secondary, which is one of the worst in the NFL, stopping the pass. Well, when a quarterback can sit back in the pocket all day long, that kind of explains why. So you get a guy like Clelin Ferrell. He's listed at 6'5", 255 pounds. He's sort of the Clay Matthews type as opposed to the Nick Perry, the 270-ish. He's going to be sort of your long, lanky, fast, speedy pass rush specialist type guy, as opposed to the Nick Perry set the edge type, which I think is important. The Packers have been phenomenal against the run this year. I know the stats don't necessarily reflect that, but just you're going to have to believe me as a guy who's watching it. They're starting to play really, really good football against the run. It's the only thing they're doing well right now, but they're doing well. They don't need another Nick Perry. They need a guy that's just going to get after the quarterback. So they trade up. They give up a third and a sixth, and they get Clelin Ferrell. Next up, we got the Arizona Cardinals, and they are going to take somebody who has fallen very far, and that is Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle, also out of Clemson. There was a lot of temptation to let him fall even further and reach for a guy like McGlinchey, but the Cardinals need a lot of help in a lot of different areas, so they're going to take a different position in need, and that is defensive tackle. Christian Wilkins has been considered a top 5 talent by some people, depending on, and who knows what it's going to be later on. And again, if you have a position on that, please let me know. But from what I've seen, Christian Wilkins is considered the top defensive tackle and certainly a top 10 talent. So sitting here at pick, I believe, 14, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to grab him. Next up, we got the Miami Dolphins, and our board and their needs match up pretty perfectly. So there's a lot of different guys they can grab. But in this case, we're going to take the top guy on our board, which is cornerback Ken Webster out of Ole Miss. He's somewhat of an unknown commodity. He kind of came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden people are saying this guy is incredible. I think Walter Cherepinski from Walter Football, he's got him as his top corner right now or something. I don't know. It's funny, though. You look at all the boards, and it's, where is he at? Did he rise or fall? And it just says new. Like, he just completely came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he's a top cornerback in the draft. So it's kind of interesting. But either way, the Dolphins are playing like garbage. I mean, there's nothing they don't really need. They could use a defensive tackle, they could use another pass rusher, they could use a linebacker, they could use a safety, they could use a corner, center, guard, tackle, tight end, wide receiver, quarterback. Heck, give them a running back. They could use a little bit of everything. This team is just not playing good football. But again, we're just going to go top of the board because when you're in rebuild mode, there's no point in reaching for anybody. You need a little bit of everything. Next year is not going to be our all-in year. We're just going to keep building, get better every single year. We got a couple pieces. We got the overpaid brute in Ndamukong Suh, and whatever. We got some pieces in there. Jay Ajayi. Oh, you know what? We got rid of Jay Ajayi. Oh my goodness, I completely forgot about that. You guys are in trouble. You need a running back too. Oh, that's painful. Anyway, still the top guy on the board, so wow. Yeah, you literally need every position. Godspeed to you there, Miami Dolphins. Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons are another team that are sort of inexplicably playing like garbage. As the year goes on, you're starting to see more defects. Earlier on in the year, I'm looking at grades on Pro Football Focus and et cetera, and it's just kind of like, man, they're pretty good everywhere. They don't really need anything. As of right now, again, this is about 2 weeks old. I'm starting to see some needs pop up. But at the time, and potentially still now, we're just gonna stick with it. We're gonna be confident in our pick. We've taken Roquan Smith, inside linebacker out of Georgia. Now, it's kind of a who's performing well versus the stats, right? I mentioned a little while ago that the Packers are great against the run, but the stats still kind of suck a little bit. The Falcons are notoriously bad against the run. Their defense has improved quite a bit. I remember back in the day, I would literally stream running backs and just play the team that's going up against the Atlanta Falcons. It was that bad. But even now, yards per attempt, they're ranked 23rd, so they do still need to get better against the run. So we got them taking the top linebacker in the draft, Roquan Smith. Next up, we got the Oakland Raiders. Raiders are going to select tackle Mike McGlinchey out of Notre Dame. Second offensive lineman to go out of Notre Dame already. You know, the Raiders, for a brief moment, it almost seemed as though they were going to be the next great thing, and then all of a sudden they just fall off completely. Maybe we all got a little ahead of ourselves with their defense not being so good, but I think more importantly than their defense right now is the fact that they need to protect their quarterback. His brother was hit more than any quarterback in the history of the NFL. That guy was bloodied and battered and bruised. They can't let that happen to him as well. Marshall Newhouse is a trash heap. He used to play for the Packers. I remember him. He was never good. He never will be good. Fact of the matter is the Oakland Raiders don't really have a good offensive lineman at all. But they need some tackle help. Whether they're upgrading Penn or whoever it is, it doesn't really matter. They need to upgrade that position. They need to keep their quarterback clean, upright, and safe. If you don't win a Super Bowl, fine. You've got many, many, many more years, assuming you can keep him healthy. He's got several years left in him, right? Guy can play for 10 more years if you want him to. Just keep him healthy, keep him upright. You'll get your Super Bowl. Just be patient. Keep him healthy. Number one priority. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions have a pick that they'd like to make. However, somebody, namely the Seattle Seahawks, have made them a trade offer to move back just a couple picks, and in return they will get a 4th-round pick. It's too appealing to pass up to just drop down a couple spaces for a 4th round, so they're going to accept that. The Seattle Seahawks, on the other hand, are going to come up because they're having heart palpitations. They just saw Mike McGlinchey go off the table. They know they have to get an offensive lineman. Even after these many years, they still cannot get this offensive line situation figured out. Again, with McGlinchey off the table, they're going to have to find somebody. They got a guy in Trey Adams. They're not going to risk losing him, so they move up. They give up a 4th. They grab Trey Adams. They still need a lot of offensive linemen, but they got to hit at a couple different spots. And if you want to assure that you're going to get somebody that isn't a complete garbage heap, it makes sense to move up in the 1st and at least try to secure one guy. And getting a tackle, well, I don't know. I guess if it was a guard, they probably would have gone up and got him anyways because they need that too. But a real good, solid 1st-round left tackle that's available, you just have to give up a 4th for him. It makes a lot of sense. So that's exactly what Seattle Seahawks are going to do here. They're going to move up and get tackle Trey Adams. Next up, we have the Washington Redskins, and the Redskins are going to take wide receiver Courtland Sutton. Sutton is an SMU Mustang. So first of all, their primary goal here should be to bring Kirk Cousins back. That should be their top priority. Kirk Cousins isn't Aaron Rodgers. Kirk Cousins isn't, he's not an elite quarterback. But this team is just hanging on by the fact that they have him. He's the only thing that this team is worth talking about. There's nothing left on this team that's any good. And you got a couple good corners. Okay, great. Sounds good. If you're going to have a good, successful football team, it all starts with a quarterback. You have your quarterback. Just pay the man. Stop playing around with this franchise tag nonsense. Give the man a contract and let's please move on. Once you do that, you've got some decent offensive linemen. You could use a couple more. Get him some wide receiver help. I mean, these guys refuse to pay for their quarterback, and then they ship off all the wide receivers that they have to other teams. Would you quit that? So draft Courtland Sutton, put him on the outside. You've got some corners. Kerrigan's a good linebacker. You got some decent linemen. Maybe pick up another one, get a guard and a center or whatever. A couple more defensive pieces. You got some building to do. 2018 is probably not going to be your year, but it starts with Cousins, and it starts after that with getting him some wide receiver help. Next up, we got the Detroit Lions, and I got them taking Ronnie Harrison, safety out of Alabama. I remember several years ago when they drafted Eric Ebron, I believe they traded up to get Eric Ebron, and the thought was, you know what, they're just doubling down because they already had a good offense. They needed help on defense. They're just going to stack this thing and see what happens. Well, that was a failure, but they're kind of doing the same thing here. Between Quinn and Slay and Diggs, they've got a decent secondary going. But they still need another corner and they need another safety. If they can hit here grabbing potentially the best safety in the draft. Now you got two solid safeties. You got some good corners. Tease Tabor, hopefully he can have a good second-year comeback. All of a sudden, you got one of the better secondaries in the NFL. And that's not the worst thing to have in the NFC North. Not just because of Rodgers, but the Vikings now have a pretty scary passing attack. The Bears' young quarterback, he's going to be having his second year and potentially some wide receiver help. So, yeah, you gotta stick with this secondary thing. You got a decent offense. At some point you gotta replace that running back. I'm so sick of Ameer Abdullah. I'm so sick of hearing every year how great he's gonna be. He's not a good running back. He doesn't fit anything. He's not a between the tackles guy. Draft somebody who can bang between the tackles and then make him your third down back or something. Just quit it. I'm not even a Lions fan. I don't like the Lions at all, but I can't take it anymore. Please let me help you. Help me help you by getting rid of Ameer Abdullah. All right, rant over. Next up, we have the Tennessee Titans, but the Titans are going to trade away their pick to the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are giving up a fourth-round pick, and they are going to draft Josh Allen. Not the quarterback, mind you, the linebacker, Josh Allen. I had you excited for a second. This is another one that seems like a weird pick, but again, I'm using a particular board. Josh Allen has fallen quite a bit, and the Bills' defense is not what it once was. Their run defense is a complete disaster. Josh Allen is the top linebacker. He's fallen down our board. We've got 2 picks coming up in the first. So we're gonna give up one, and we're gonna go up and get Josh Allen and start the process of rebuilding this defense to be, one of the best. There can only be so many best defenses in the NFL, so I can't keep saying it. But you can be a good defense. You got to return to what you formerly were. How's that sound? Not very good. Moving on. The Dallas Cowboys are taking Equanimeous St. Brown, something like that. Wide receiver and our third Notre Dame player to go off the board in the first round. That's got to be a first, right? The Cowboys' offense had one pretty good year of just being pretty dominant. Their defense was, good enough to get them by. And just like the Oakland Raiders, you look at them in this first year and you think, man, this is really something special, and then they start to fall off. The fact of the matter is, you need to get some more weapons. You got Dak, you got Zeke, you got Dez for a little bit. Why? That's weird. They all have these shortened things. But Dez isn't what he used to be. He's getting up in age. St. Brown is a big, big dude. 6'5", 205-ish. He's just a big go-up-and-get-it type wide receiver. You put him on the other side of Dez, and you got Cole Beasley flying around in the middle of the field. I mean, it's a pretty scary offense at that point. Again, another team that's going to need some defensive help, but this makes a little sense. Let's just stack success here. We've got one of the scariest running backs in the draft. Dez is still a big, bad guy. If we can pull some attention away from him, we got Cole Beasley that Dak seems to like. And now we're adding Equanimeous St. Brown, who is just a big, bad monster. He's going to be a red zone nightmare, which Dez already is. It's going to be tough to slow this team down. Next up, the Titans are back on the board, and they're going to take Christian Kirk, wide receiver out of Texas A&M. I know they took a wide receiver last year, but that isn't really working out too well. And beyond that, they just don't have very much. Nothing's really working out. They've got Eric Decker, who hasn't really been all that great. Rashard Matthews, who is probably their best wide receiver, isn't all that great. And Matthews and Decker have been around for a while. So even if you assume Davis takes a leap next year, bring in Christian Kirk in. I mean, he can replace Matthews, but even better, he could replace Decker, free up a little bit of cap room. So now, we're talking best case scenario, but we got our quarterback, we got some decent running backs, we got a decent offensive line, we got a pretty good defense. We got Davis, who's made a second-year leap. We got Matthews, who's a serviceable wide receiver. And now we got one of the most dynamic wide receivers to come out in a while, a guy that's been compared to Odell Beckham. We can put him in the slot. Or, when we're doing 2 wide, we can put him and Davis out on the field. There's some serious potential here to go from being kind of this middling team to being a legit contender next year, just with this one pick. I mean, again, we got to assume Davis kind of steps it up a little bit. But if he does, and if Christian Kirk can come in and can perform right away, we have a good enough defense and now a scary enough offense to really start to make an impact in the NFL. Next up, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars on a little bit of a surprise pick. They're going to be taking quarterback Clayton Thorson. He is a quarterback out of Northwestern. Not a name that people are overly familiar with, but the particular board that I'm using, he is the next one up. The Jaguars certainly could use another quarterback. They're another team where you look at them and you say, man, if they just had a quarterback, this would be a decent team. I think they're going to need to get some help on the offensive line. Their wide receivers are pretty good when they're healthy, but they're all pretty banged up right now. But that defense, boy, oh man. I mean, again, we're talking best case scenario, but if Clayton Thorson is able to come in and perform and just be a game manager is all they need, because they got Leonard Fournette, they've got some talented wide receivers that can make plays if you just put the ball in the right area. Grab a couple offensive linemen that can hopefully help you out, because this offensive line is just not getting it done. But you just need to be good enough on offense. Just get a quarterback that can consistently drive you down the field, and Fournette's going to do most of the work. Just, if it's 3rd and 4 and they call a pass, just complete the pass, right? It's going to be a short, quick throw. Just don't suck at it, and you're going to be great. And this defense is just going to carry you, assuming they can be more consistent, because this defense, one day they're the best in the NFL, and understandably so, because they're all just freak shows. But, the next week then they're giving up a ton of points and losing the game. I don't understand it. Maybe a couple coaches to help that out, because when you have that level of talent playing poorly rather consistently, it needs to be better than that. But again, quarterback probably the primary need here for this team if you're going to actually make a push into the playoffs. Trenton Thorson, he is going to be Clayton Thorson. Got a little bit ahead of myself there. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers. And we have a pick that every single Panthers fan is going to hate, but here it is for you. We're going to take running back Nick Chubb out of Georgia. The reason everyone's going to hate that, first of all, they took a running back in the first round last year in Christian McCaffrey. Fact of the matter is, one, I don't like that pick. I don't think he was ever really a very good pick. However, if I'm going to sell this to my fan base, to whoever, the media, what I'm going to say is I'm not replacing him, I'm complimenting him. Jonathan Stewart is just having an absolutely horrible year. Christian McCaffrey, from what I can tell, is not the best between the tackles guy in the NFL. If you can bring in a guy like Nick Chubb to be your banger between the tackles, and you got Christian McCaffrey to be your third down back, this team still has a lot of talent, right? You still got your quarterback, your offensive line isn't bad. You probably could use some wide receiver help and some corner help, whatever, but there's plenty of pieces here to be better than you are right now. It's going to upset a lot of people, but the fact of the matter is the board that I'm using, Nick Chubb, he was valued at like 15, but he just fell because nobody needs a running back in that entire group. The Carolina Panthers see his value. They see the need there, again, with Stewart just playing like complete trash, and McCaffrey serving a purpose but not really being a good every down back. So they're going to get Nick Chubb. Everyone's going to hate him, but you know what? They're going to get production, and by mid of next year, everyone's going to completely forget about it. Next up, we have the Bills and their second pick. I have them taking defensive tackle Trenton Thompson out of Georgia. Second Georgia player in a row. Twice now the Bills have taken the best player available, and twice now they have helped to bolster their defense, especially against the run, which is something that they're struggling with. This defense has a ton of talent, but they absolutely need linebackers, which they just got one with their first pick, and now they need another defensive tackle. They don't have a lot of talent there, and this Adolphus Washington is just a complete garbage heap. He has not been any good in year one or year two. So you bolster up the center of this I mean, they're just so soft at the middle is the bottom line, right? Their corners, their safeties, they're decent on the edge. They got nothing in the middle. They got nothing for linebackers. They're just a pile of goo in the middle. So 2 first-round picks on a linebacker and a defensive tackle have completely turned this team, I don't know if I want to say around, but at the very least in that garbage heap of a division, they have a good chance to consistently be second behind the Patriots. Next up, we have the LA Rams, and I got them taking Harold Landry, edge rusher out of Boston College. Landry, it's kind of weird. You got some people who are saying he is the top guy. He's a freak. I love Landry. He's going to be a top 5, this, that, or the other. I believe there was a comment in my mock that Landry's no good. I don't know if I had the Packers taking him or what, but I was kind of surprised at the dislike of Landry, because I'm not a huge Harold Landry fan, but I like him significantly less than everyone else I've heard. So A lot of up and down. Again, if you have an opinion, be sure to send it to me. But in my opinion, Harold Landry probably isn't going to fall this far. However, for our purposes with the board that we're using, it makes a lot of sense. He is 6'3", 250 pounds, so he's going to fit with the Rams 3-4 system just fine. The Rams do not have any decent edge rushers. They need to get younger, they need to get faster, they need to get stronger, they just need to get better off the edge. This is a team that's just absolutely dominating. Their offense has come out of nowhere. Everything's just clicking all at once, but they certainly could use some help on defense, especially at the edge. They're getting one of the better edge rushers at the end of the first round, so this is a fantastic pick for the Rams. I don't think they will regret it one bit. Next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings, and they are also going to be drafting Josh Allen, except this time it is the quarterback. This is another one that Vikings fans are probably going to hate, and I promise I'm not doing it just because they're a rival of the Packers. But, you got to wonder what the plan is at quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater and Sam Bradford both have significant injury histories. I don't think either of them are elite quarterbacks. Sam Bradford has shown flashes of just being unbelievably incredible, but he's also had pretty bad games. He can never stay healthy. Teddy Bridgewater was never anything better than just average. So, you got to consider it. What do you do in this situation? But with Josh Allen sitting here, he's a good value. Some consider him to be early first round type guy. It just kind of made sense to me that the Vikings could use him. If nothing else, you use him as a backup behind Teddy Bridgewater and just assume that there's going to be plenty of opportunities with injuries for him to step in. And with the defense that we're building, with these great wide receivers we're starting to develop out here, we really have a chance to take the division consistently if we could just be consistent on the field. Right, we got this our flashy new running back, and that guy's hurt, and we got Stephon Diggs, who's one of the better wide receivers in the NFL, and we've got this defense that's just nobody can run on this defense, or nobody can move on this defense. We just can't get people to stay healthy and stay on the field. So for that reason, it makes sense to me, at least, to go out and get a guy if you believe he can be a starter, if you believe he can be a great quarterback, a guy that can compete with Teddy Bridgewater to be the starting quarterback and to stay on the field and, get this team a Super Bowl for once. To me, it makes sense. But again, you let me know. Next up, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I have them taking tight end Hayden Hurst out of South Carolina. I know a lot of people are very anti-tight end in the first round and whatnot, but the Steelers are another team that have a lot of talent in a lot of different places. It could be considered a luxury pick, but when you've got, man, oh man, you got your quarterback, you've got maybe the best wide receiver in the game, you've got maybe the best running back in the game. If you can add a phenomenal tight end, and you talk about need, so we've got a position of need because you don't have a very good tight end. You've got a great value here. You've got the top tight end in the draft. It just makes a lot of sense to me to have this elite offense. And by the way, consistency is an issue. You look at the offense and you just say, why isn't this the best offense week to week, every single week? They need to get more players on this offense. You've got a ton of players on your defense already. I mean, obviously you could use more. Everybody could use more of everything. You could do offensive line. You could do a lot of different stuff here. But adding this guy, and then you got Smith-Schuster, who's really starting to step up. The Steelers are always on the verge. They're always a pretty good team, but they're not quite good enough. You got to get over the hump. And I think a guy like Hayden Hurst, who's going to be able to work the middle of the field and kind of add another dimension to this team that they haven't had before, right? We know you have Antonio Brown. We know you have Le'Veon Bell. Outside of that, what are you throwing at me? Bryant? Who cares? Get a tight end in there who can block, which will help your run game, but who can also slip out and stretch the middle of the field and be a red zone threat and all this other stuff. I mean, it really adds another dimension to this team that's maybe going to help take them to that next level. Next, we have the New England Patriots. I did receive one note recently about the New England Patriots, and that is, you stupid idiot, we don't need defensive tackles. So with that, I have them taking defensive tackle Taven Bryan out of Florida. I am going to respectfully disagree that they don't need a defensive tackle. It maybe isn't their top priority, but as I mentioned to them, I'm not going to reach deep into the second round to get somebody who is a higher need. I have a draft board. I'm going to stick to it. They absolutely did. They're dead last against the run. dead last in yards per carry, which I think is the most important metric, because if you get run on more than anybody, there's going to be more yards than anybody. Yards per carry is kind of takes that all into consideration, and they are dead last in that category. Looking at the players that they have available, yes, I agree, linebacker would be much more important, and if there was a linebacker that was a good value here, absolutely I would take the linebacker. Maybe I should have had him trade up and grab that linebacker instead of whoever it was I had, but I didn't, and you absolutely need help here. You don't have anybody that's worth writing home about in the middle. Adam Butler is a joke. Lawrence Guy has never been better than average. Alan Branch, whatever. I mean, none of these guys are worthy of being Pro Bowl players, right? They're just, there's nothing really here that's all that fantastic. So when the top guy on the board is a defensive tackle, I'm certainly not going to look at it and go, maybe we should trade out of this spot. I don't like it. No, we're going to take him because we need him. So with that, Patriots taking Taven Bryan, they're going to help shore up that the middle of their defense a little bit. Yes, they do need linebackers, but it's the first round. We can get linebackers second, third, fourth round, whatever. We don't need to reach in the first round to get a linebacker. Next up, we have the New Orleans Saints, and I have the Saints taking wide receiver Paris Campbell, Ohio State. You know, if it wasn't for the success of this team and the fact that this is literally one of my favorite teams in the NFL right now. They're playing out of their mind. Fantastic cornerback duo. This defense has really turned a corner, which maybe the reason I like the Saints so much is because it gives me hope. I've always felt like the Packers and the Saints were very similar, right? Good quarterback, scary offense, terrible defense. And just like that, their defense is freakishly good. So it's given me some hope. With that said, as good as they're playing, the question of what happens with Drew Brees seems to answer itself. I think you got to bring him back. He wants to come back. You know, I think he's overpaid. And again, if it wasn't for the fact of how good this team is playing right now, I would just say, look, we can't afford to pay you anymore. You're either going to take a pay cut or we're going to go out and find somebody else. You still want to look for a quarterback at some point to replace him, but at this point in time, we're just looking to stack success. If we don't get a Super Bowl this year, which is entirely possible that we do, well, whether we do or we don't, we're coming back and looking to get another one. With that said, though, we're just going to look to stack talent. Drafting Thomas was a phenomenal decision. He has panned out just amazingly for this team. But Ginn and Snead, not quite so much. So we're going to go out and get another wide receiver. We're going to hope to be at least as somewhat successful, as successful as we were with Thomas. If we can get two guys playing real good football at wide receiver, coupled with, we've got Kamara, who's been a great running back, decent offensive line, a pretty decent tight end, a really good defense, which we're going to continue to improve throughout the draft. I mean, as long as Brees can keep kicking, I mean, who's to say we can't keep getting Super Bowls? I mean, he's looking fine. He doesn't look like he's slowing down. I don't really like how much money we're paying him, but who cares? And really, I mean, you at this stage of the game, he's not even really getting paid that much anymore. Right? Because every year that number keeps going up, and all of a sudden you got bums getting paid nearly as much as he's getting paid. So, I mean, I guess if we can get him to sign for an extension, I don't know, 3 years or whatever, at what he's currently being paid, which, $24 million? By the time he retires, he's going to be one of the lowest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. So, yeah, extend him, get him another weapon, and let's just stack success here. Let's see if we can do 4 years this year and 3 more. Let's see how many we can get, especially with this NFL just kind of crumbling right now. You look at how many teams are just falling apart. To be in a team that's ascending at this time, like the Eagles and the Rams and the Saints are, this is a great time to be ascending because you can go out and get you a couple Super Bowls before anybody even knows what happened to them. Finally, we have our Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, and I have them taking cornerback Tarvarus McFadden, coming out of Florida State. Typically, he's been mocked quite a bit higher than this, but in our particular mock, he's not seen as quite as valuable. But Tarvarus McFadden, a great talent, a great athlete, pretty big guy at 6'2", 200 pounds. Eagles are another team that are just looking to stack success. We got a very talented and very young team. Great offensive line, great defense. Probably could use some wide receiver help more than anything, but at this point in time, we just don't really have that. Corners aren't great, and again, McFadden is just a phenomenal talent. He's going to come in and just upgrade this defense instantly. We can look to wide receiver and offensive line, maybe get another tackle or something later on in the draft. But for right now, we're going to take the top guy. We're going to keep this machine rolling, and we're just going to get a little bit better every year. And as long as Wentz is our quarterback, we're going to be just fine. With that, we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to do my best. I tried to lay the groundwork so that I can do this a little quicker. I'm hoping to do one every single week. Again, guys, you got my email, and that is Gmail. If you couldn't figure that out, that's what that emblem is. So it's the PackDaddy86 at Gmail. Pack_Daddy is my Twitter. Check out the link in the description for our Facebook group. That's where we can just kind of throw ideas around, and I want to be able to check that and see, what you're saying about this, that, or the other thing. And again, I just want to be accessible to everybody. If you have ideas, if you have thoughts, if you have whatever, I want this to be more community. Again, it's not me as the know-it-all and you in the comment section proving that you're smarter than me by telling me I'm an idiot. I want this to be a team effort. We're gonna make this a lot of fun. So you folks have yourself a good week. So far I haven't seen the football games yet. This is Sunday morning. I don't know how early I'm gonna get this up, but you enjoy your Sunday, enjoy some football, and we'll see you next week.